All right, everyone. Welcome to this week's Learn Academy's Connected Sessions. We're really excited to have you all here for today's webinar with our fantastic long-term internship partner, community partner, ZEAL, which is an amazing company that's based out of Portland, Oregon, that Learn has had the wonderful opportunity to connect with, build programs, and continue to help to shape what the tech community is looking like from a talent pipeline point of view, as well as from contributing some awesome code and programmers. My name is Brian Banville. I am the Career Services Manager at Learn Academy, and very excited to introduce you all today to the ZEAL team in just a few minutes. Logistics for the call, as I had mentioned, for some of you coming into the call, highly recommend that you take some time to introduce yourself in the chat function so that we know where you're from, what brings you here today. We'll also be using the chat function to ask questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to, if questions come up, to put them into the chat bar. And then we'll also have a Q&A at the end as well. But we'll have one of the ZEAL team members will be moderating the chat function and kind of answer those questions as we go. So I highly recommend also keeping track of that chat functionality. We will be recording today's session. So if you know some friends, family members, or coworkers that weren't able to jump on today that you would love to share this session with, it will be coming out next week on Learn's YouTube channel. And so we highly recommend sharing that out as well. All right, so to get started, these connected sessions were created and started when COVID-19 shelter-in-place happened here in California, and it was our way of reaching out to not only our fantastic alumni network with Learn Academy, which is a full-stack web development boot camp here in San Diego, but to also connect with others within the tech community and to bring some really, really great ways for people to connect and kind of do a lunch and learn while also of ways to continue to stay positive and to stay connected during these crazy times. And so today we are excited to welcome the team at ZEAL. We have Kevin Craine, who will be leading most of today, and then Jason Harrison, who will be moderating the chat function, but is also here today to answer a lot of questions and kind of support Kevin throughout today's presentation. Kevin and Jason have both been with ZEAL for just about the same time. Jason is a little bit of a front runner, but roughly they're both been there for a little bit over 5 years. And I'm really excited for them to share with you guys today how to not only be a great remote team worker, but also how to just be a really great teammate. So Kevin, Jason, welcome to the call.
Thank you, thank you. Hope everyone's doing great in this trying times, and no doubt we're in very different times right now. So remote work, what's it all about? How do you do it? And how do you not suck at it? I sucked a lot in the beginning, and now I don't suck as much at it. So there are many jobs that are remote right now, and you'll find that that may change as we move forward through this unique situation. They may go back, they may stick with it, you never know. So it's good to be flexible and be willing to learn and change with the companies that you're looking at. Hopefully you'll get something out of this guide about some positive remote work experiences. It's going to kind of lay out my history of it. I've been kind of doing this for let's see, how long have I been doing it? About 10 years now, a little over 10 years I've been remote working in various ways. And the struggles are real. When I first started, it was not good, and I've had to like really adjust as I went along. And while I still struggle, it's not nearly as severe or as much as when I first started. So don't feel like, you know, it's just going to be easy. If you're freaked out about it, that's okay. Just get going and learn as you go and try to adjust. And if you think it's going to be easy breezy, great. And if it doesn't end up being easy breezy, come back to this and look into it. So struggles are real. So from a employer point of view, especially when they're being forced to go into this remote working situation, there's going to be a lot of apprehension. Remote work means people aren't going to be seeing you, come in the front door and sit down at your desk and doing your work. So because of that, there's this decreased visibility that could lead to uncertainty about, what you're doing, or, if you're doing anything at all, or, there's a lot of fear around it from employers, especially the ones that are kind of being forced into this situation. And from the other side of it, from our points of view as employees, you have to really change your lifestyle, right? You have to handle isolation, and it's a lot of hard work, right? Because all the stuff that you normally do, like get up in the morning and take a shower and get dressed because you have to, because you're going out into the world, you don't have to do anymore. So you have to actually work at it to make sure you're getting past those things. So it's hard work, and there's a lot of uncertainty. So how do we kind of combat that? So I have a goal for myself, and this is my goal that I try to set. I want to be thoughtful, focused, productive, time applied to my teammates and project. For whatever I'm working on, I want to really be thoughtful about it and make sure that I'm doing what I can when I'm supposed to be doing it. And then I want to forget about it, and I want to move on and do the things that I enjoy out of work, which may be, learning to code more, or it may be playing with my dog, or enjoying my family. But this is while I'm at work. I try to be as focused as I can on this. So how do I do this? I established a framework, and I have been following this for quite a while. And I'm going to lay out, like, the top level items are really the basic framework, the top level items that I think everyone should really think about. And then I'm going to explain to you, like, what I do to implement those things. And I'm only doing that as this is what's worked for me as examples. It might not work for you, and that's perfectly cool. But at least gives you something to say, oh, okay, I might agree with that, or I don't agree with that, and that's just silly. Why would you ever do that? So to go forward, the first thing I do is I have to have a routine. Now, the routine for you could be I roll out of bed and I start coding. That's cool, but for me, that does not work. I tried to do that. That was when I first started. I tried doing that, and it did not work. You end up with a very stinky person who doesn't want to leave the house ever. But so what I do now is I get up, I pretend like I'm basically going into a job. So I groom myself, whatever that may mean to you. I wake up at the same time every day. I try to get a good night of rest. And actually, because of this routine, I no longer have to use an alarm. I always wake up at 6 a.m. because I like the morning and it's my most productive time. And I have fixed hours. So I go in and I work my 8 to 5, and then I'm done and I walk away. Now, again, I don't always follow this 100% of the time, but when I do, I always feel way better. And I know this, but humans are susceptible to their, digression. So, I try to do my best, and I don't get beat myself up if I don't always do it. So some days I sit on my little, I have a nice little here. I just knocked out my power on my monitor. I have a nice little cozy sack right there, if you can see that. That's my relaxing cozy sack. Now if I can just get my screen back, that would be great. No. Sorry.
It's okay. Showing the comfort sack was very important, Kevin.
It was. It was extremely important. Oh, and now it's really
happy. Stop sharing. Okay. Still sharing. Okay. Do you still see the slides?
Yeah, we're all set, Kev.
Okay, cool.
It turns out that doing this stuff, you don't have to be perfect, even if you've been doing it for a while. It's
yes.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, so some days I relax and you know, but usually I get right back on the horse and get back into my schedule. I try to, like I said, I have fixed hours, but when I do those fixed hours, like I really enjoy saying to my family, "Bye, I'm heading into work," and I walk down my stairs and I go to work. And then, oh look, I'm home for lunch. Let's go for a walk. And then I walk upstairs and I'm with my family again. But I really try to limit my household interactions as much as I possibly can. So we had, as a funny story, I've been working with this client and, you know, going through this process of everyone having to work from home on this project. I watched one individual who had a camera on at all times slowly de-evolve. So the first day, like you could tell his hair was a little messed up. He wasn't quite sure what was going on. I mean, now it's just like his hair is completely nuts. His kids are walking in all the time. He's like going insane. So, you know, I try to help him out as much as I can, but everyone's got to figure out their own path. So it's all good. All right. So next, the environment. And like I showed off my cozy sack, I think the environment is really important as a separate place to go. That's important for me. It may not be important for you, but it really helps me mentally change. And the reason I came to this is when I first started, like I said, I'd really just roll out of bed and, you know, eat some breakfast maybe, and then start working. And after a little, like 6 months of it, I was not doing well. So what I ended up doing is getting a co-working space and start heading into my co-working space. And what this did was it forced me to do all the things I was used to doing before, right? Which was getting myself ready and going into work. But what it did is I was then able to bring that home. Like, okay, so now I'm just going to pretend like I'm going into a co-working space, and this is my co-working space. It's my office down in my basement. I'm lucky enough that I get to have an office in my basement, but any place you can kind of isolate yourself is good, at least in my book. So the more I separate, the better it is for everyone involved, right? For me to concentrate on work, for like the amount of work I can get done. My wife would get mad at me when I was working in like a shared space because she'd like ask me something and I was in the middle of coding and it's hard to divert, but she doesn't understand that, and that's okay. It's just it made conflicts happen more. So finding that nice separation as much as you need to for your situation. I always try to keep a clean environment. So everything around here is pretty clean now. The rest of my house is pretty messy, but this area here is pretty clean. I also try to make sure it's an area where I can control the noise levels. So there's, you know, my dog's upstairs. She doesn't come downstairs to bark while I'm on my calls and such. So that's more of a nicety as far as I'm not going to get interrupted, and there's not a bunch of background noise. So it feels more like an office than it does a home. And then if I want to, I can blast my music and it doesn't bother my family while I'm coding. So, and however comfortable you need to be, like I said, I may sit on my cozy sack, or I have a yoga ball that I sit on. I don't actually sit on a chair because I find I move a lot. If you can't tell, I'm actually currently moving. If I really wanted to, and I might, but I can start my treadmill because I have a treadmill that I walk on too right now. So movement to me is very, very important. So, and then, and I also surround my things like I would in an office, I guess, with things that make me happy. So like my little Groot guy here. Ooh, I covered him up. Here's Groot with his little, you know, plants growing out of his head. And I have this was when my kids were young. I made them a baby mobile. So, and you know, and I like the word love, so I have that down there. So things that make me happy, I surround myself with. And then it was funny because I don't know if you guys have seen this little YouTube video that's been floating around where a reporter was doing a story about cutting her hair, and she was in the bathroom and she didn't notice that in the reflection in the mirror, her husband was taking a shower behind her, like completely naked. Like, so it's really important to have a good established environment about what you're doing to make sure, you're not like, you can always throw up the, the backgrounds. Like I see some of you have the nice backgrounds. So that's a good way to handle that as well. Okay. So communication, and actually I believe communication is the most important part of all this. It's going to be what settles the mind of yourself as you get communication from your employer back to you. And when it's going to settle them so you can like let them know what you're doing, right? So the more open you are with your communication, the easier it is. And this is where it takes a lot more work and a lot more effort than it would normally if you were just in an office, right? Because this would just happen naturally, like as you walk by someone's desk and they would just say, hey, do you have a second or something like that. You have to be, using good technology, right? Making sure you have solid internet. And sometimes that's not always an option. So going somewhere, which might not be an option right now, but it is really important. It's really frustrating if I'm pairing with someone because we pair program. If they have really spotty internet, it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for both of us. So making sure you're using good technology like Zoom for these video type things, Slack for quick chatting or something like that. We use Tuple for pair programming. So just making sure you have the right technology to support your communication needs. What else? Making sure, I think it's very important, you're trying to replace the real world in-person experience. So having a camera, I think, and having the camera on so people can like see you and read your body language and, know what's going on, like more than just what you're saying, especially just in text and like chats, because a lot can be misunderstood in there. So I think having as much as you can is really nice. Let's see. And speaking of chats, so the ways I like to keep in touch is, so we use Slack for chatting, and really any of those technologies, you can create channels. So we have small channels for like just a few individuals. So like I might have like a 2 or 3 person channel that with the people that I work with like on a regular basis. And I do that because that way I can say, hey, I'm going to be gone for about 10 minutes to go feed my dog or whatever the case may be, right? Or something along those lines. And then it's also good for, hey, I'm stuck. I don't want to be stuck for long, because what happens when you're stuck is your throughput goes way down, right? So if the longer you get stuck, the worse it gets. Now, sometimes it's really good to work through some hard problems on your own. But if you're just spinning your wheels and not able to get anywhere, I want to be reached out to, and I hope other people reach out to me and I reach out to people as I need. Let's see, what else? So knowing when to get help and not just like, heads down, I'm gonna put blinders on and not pay attention to anything else, can be detrimental. So again, it's hard work. You have to keep at it. We also have daily check-ins where we, our stand-ups, we have usually internal stand-up for all of ZEAL, and then we have a stand-up for our client projects, whatever projects we're on. And that's just a really good way to touch base and say, hey, I have a problem, or hey, this is what I did, or hey, someone need help, I'm available, that kind of stuff. And then we also do, depending on the team and whatnot, we also do handoffs. So if the team is distributed across time zones, we will hand off, like, this is where I got to, and then that team can finish it off or pick it up in the morning when they come in, the earlier team comes in. So yeah, the communication, I think, is one of the key elements. And maybe this is more key, I don't know. Staying sane is very important. So on top of just having a good routine and a good environment, handling isolation can be extremely hard. Sorry, I got distracted by chat. I need to not do that. Jason's supposed to do that. So taking breaks when you need breaks. Like if you feel yourself, if you feel anxious or you feel your partner, your pair are getting anxious, if you're pair programming, then, suggest a break, even a 5-minute break. If you're really stuck and no one's available right now, taking a break, I have found actually gives me the answer, because when I come back, I have a clear head. I start over the thinking process, and then I'm able to find out what I have missed or something along those lines. So, don't stress yourself out too much by pushing through it. Sometimes it's good, but know yourself to know when to say, nope, I need a break. I need to go take 5 minutes. Another thing to stay sane is changing things up. Say, okay, I'm going to sit now instead of stand, or I'm going to take my laptop outside because it's beautiful weather out there. So being flexible and not being too rigid with yourself. I also think exercise and getting outside, getting some sun is really important. So like I said earlier, I take walks with my family at lunch. I think it's good to do at least some kind of exercise. And like I was saying earlier too, like the keeping in mind who you're working with and how they're feeling, the empathy part. Like, so if I can feel that someone else is getting frustrated, it's good to be thinking of the other person, because the more I think personally, the more I think about the other person, the more focused I am on how I feel as well. Like it helps the dynamic, I think. So, and then being thankful for what I do have. I'm happy that I have a job where I don't have to drive, and I can take my laptop outside and work, or just being thankful for little things, whatever that may be, right? Just to keep a positive attitude. Meditation is another great thing that helps people stay positive and stay healthy. And then I think non-work interactions is important too. So having, and you have those with your friends and family, but also with your other teammates. So we do a weekly meeting where there's 2 of us that meet and just talk about whatever, and it's completely not work related. We call them our SUPs. Like, what's up? I don't know. Is that hip? I don't know. Anyways, so staying sane. That's my 2 cents. All right. So those are the main 4 things. So it's not a lot, right? Routine, environment, communication, and things to keep you sane. But you really need to find out what works for you. Even if it's very little and you're happy like that, that's great. But I still think you should think about it, right? Because it at least gives you a place to come back to if things start to go awry. And they probably will, because it's hard. And especially if you're by yourself and you're living by yourself, it's even harder. So yeah, reach out and see what works for you. And if you have questions, let me know. And then finding what works for your company or client that you're working with. What's important to them? I mean, each company is really going to have a different take on what they find valuable for a remote employee or employee in general. And make sure what is important to them matches up with what's important to you. Even if you you need to be flexible and reach out. And if it doesn't, then see if it does. I mean, try it. And if it doesn't, then And then the last one is adjust as needed. Your framework should be flexible within reason. Like if they're asking you to do, if your company's asking you to do things like, I don't know, you got to work at midnight because that's when our, every day for whatever reason, that seems a bit much of an ask. But if you have to and you're okay with it, cool. But if it's not for you, then might be something you have to talk to them about. And I think, again, the open communication thing is really important, that if it's not okay with you, you should talk to them. And if you find that that's an issue, then, you know, there's other options out there. But if you're there and you need to eat, and you need to feed your family, you know, just find the best way you can make of it. All right. So, and on that note, there's companies are going to handle this differently. Like ZEAL, for instance, is a very remote friendly company. At this point, we're all full-time remote, as pretty much everyone is. But there's red flags you can watch out for, right? That may be acceptable, but if there's too many of them, they may become unacceptable. Just know that there are other companies out there that, you know, aren't new to this and are doing this, but some companies that are new just really might not know. So talking to them about it would be a great place to start. But watch out for some of these red flags. So the first is trust. And that really goes to, I'm uncertain of what you're doing. So there must be trust for both sides, right? I need to trust my company and my company needs to trust me. If there's a lack of trust, it can cause stress between both parties, both sides. So really, it goes back to the communicating about that and making sure, hey, you know, is there a reason why you're asking me to do this thing? So one of our coworkers had a funny story where a family member of his was during this process was given. They were going to go remote working, and they were given a document to sign that says, I promise I will work. It was the gist of the document. That's a very, like, doesn't feel very trusting of like, I have to sign my name in order for you to believe I'm going to actually work. So those kind of things could be a red flag. Measurements. So, and it really depends on the company. ZEAL is a little bit different because we are a consultancy, so we're working for many different types of clients, and different clients measure in different ways. But overall, you might find that they're basing their measurements on the number of tasks you complete, the amount of work you're getting done. Some are just concerned with how long you're at work, and some are concerned with how many bugs you're creating, or how many bugs you're solving, or how much code you're writing, how many lines of code. So some of those things are red flags. So like if they're asking you how many lines of code you write, that's kind of a red flag that they don't know what they're like really looking for, and they're just trying to grab onto a metric. And then it's really a good point where you could talk to them and say, hey, that's not, you know, really a great metric. How about this, about like what I'm getting done during the day? So just another talking point. The framework that the company uses may be very loose or may be very rigid for their remote work. And both of those have drawbacks. If it's too rigid, right, it might not fit within your definition of a happy working environment. But if it's too loose, you might not know what to do, right? You might just go crazy because you have no idea of what to do. And again, just great places to have conversations. Some and different companies have different like expected hours. Some are very fixed. You work 8 to 5, you know, Pacific Standard Time. Some are just get the work done, whatever you want to work, just, you know, just as long as you're getting the work done. Some are variable. So I worked, one of the jobs I worked in a previous life, we had one person in, this was the team that I ran. We had a person in Australia, we had a person in Vancouver, and we had a team in India and a team in Georgia. And I had to communicate with all those. And let me tell you, there's not a good overlap of time on any of those. So that was a very special situation, but that I had to work variable hours where I'd work basically 2 hours here and 4 hours here, and then another 2 hours here, just to make sure everyone was getting the information they needed. What I think is a red flag, though, is if they're asking you to always be on. Like, okay, I've sent you a message. Why haven't you responded at 10 o'clock at night? Well, I didn't know I need to be. So if that's kind of a red flag and should be a discussion item if it bothers you. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Okay, structure of the teams. So right now everyone's pretty much remote, but as we roll back into not being all remote, you might find mixed teams where some are co-located in the same place and some have remote members. I find that the best thing to do is to treat everyone as if they were remote, because if you get a group in this kind of a meeting, right, if you had 10 people sitting around a table and you had 2 people that are dialed in, it's very hard for those 2 people to always catch what's going on in that meeting room, especially since they usually don't have a camera that captures everyone. You're not really understanding the dynamic of what's going on. So I really try to push for that kind of thing. And then if they really silo people, like, okay, you're only going to work on this small sliver of a thing, it really makes it hard to say, hey, Kevin, I need you to help me. Well, I don't know that. I haven't touched that. I can look at it with you, but if they really silo people, it's kind of a red flag to me. Not that you have to have huge cross-platform teams, but if they basically just give you an assignment and tell you to go off and do it, then that makes it difficult. All right, and then there is support for remote work. So how supportive are they of remote workers? Again, I've already stated this, but because communication is so important, is a two-way thing. You should expect as much communication from them as you need to feel good about the direction that you're heading, the direction of the company. I'm lucky ZEAL is very good at this. We have our daily stand-ups. They let us know business updates in those stand-ups, and it's really good. And then we also get to have our own feedback, and we have individual feedback loops too. And so not in front of everyone, but like one-on-ones where I can talk to Jason or Adam or whoever about any of my concerns. Make sure they're good with any kind of changes, technology or process changes, because you might find a really good technology, and if they're so stuck with their technology that is causing issues, then it's there has to be good reason behind it. There might be a good reason behind it, but it's easier if you can try at least try things out, right? If they're open to that. And right now, at least my kids are at home being homeschooled, so I have some extra time that I need to go spend with my kids to make sure they're doing their homework and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully they have support for family needs. And then if you're really struggling, hopefully they have support for you there, like whether it's talking to someone, or maybe helping you get some exercise equipment so you can get some exercise, or setting something up for your environment to really support you. So that's pretty much it. I kind of burned through that quickly. So those were a few of the things. Jason, did we get any good questions?
We did, but we sort of already answered them in the chat. But I actually wanted to add a couple of things, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
I don't have any slides, so just enjoy the view. The things that I really wanted to sort of emphasize are, excuse me, when you aren't able to be in person, for some people, that might actually be very difficult. For some people, the thought of having to work alone could actually be, they could be fearful of that. They could know themselves well enough to know that I don't do well alone. I have to work in a group or something like that. So try to have empathy for the folks who are sort of forced into that situation, at least for the time being, and hopefully we find another way. But just realize that not everybody is totally ready for this kind of a working environment. And which sort of leads me to my other really important point, is that you aren't going to have those water cooler talks. You aren't going to be sort of just walking through the hall and say, oh, hey, Chantel, can I just talk to you for a minute? You aren't going to have that. And so you really need to be proactive about things like that, and reach out to people. And if there's an issue, or if you're trying to work through a challenge of some sort, whether it's code or work or interpersonal or whatever it may be, if you have people that you are that you have a connection with that you can talk to, do that, because you're not going to have the opportunity to just catch them in the hall or whatever. So because the communication part, and Kevin certainly emphasized that, is so important, that is another area that might not be super comfortable for everybody, right? We aren't all great at expressing our feelings and our needs, the things that'll hopefully make us adapt to whatever this work scenario may be. And so there's going to potentially, for some folks, there'll be some growth around that. But I really encourage you to do that. Which goes along with that last bit that Kevin was talking about, the support part. If you already work at a place that does this really well, good. There's a lot of places that don't. And if you are currently looking for work, it's really important that you understand how they support their people, right? Do they have one-on-ones? How often? Do they offer any kind of budgetary support? In other words, could they help you get a desk if you don't have one, or buy you a good chair if you don't have one, or could they help pay for better internet if you don't have it? Those things, those are helpful things. So just don't be afraid to ask those kinds of questions. Ask about, is remote a permanent thing for your company? Right now, a lot of companies are doing it temporarily. So you want to ask if it's going to be permanent or not. You want to ask what they do to help, the people who are working remotely, what they do to maintain connection, and those kinds of things. Is it Mio? Is that how you pronounce that? Mayo.
Yeah.
In terms of communicating any questions, concerns to your team or manager, how often is too often? That's going to depend on the team and the manager, but and what channels you have to do that through. So with our team, for example, we have one-on-ones. Everyone has a one-on-one with me every other week, which kind of sounds like a lot. We actually used to do it every week. But every other week is when we can kind of bring those things. But when things are sort of coming to a head, I've had to talk down a couple of teammates who were just kind of
Never
getting
happened
to.
with me. Never happened with me. Nope.
So when things are getting to a head, I think it's really important for you to ask the kinds of questions that would help you understand the team you would be working with, because you don't want to have to worry about that question. You don't want to have to worry about, well, am I bringing this up too often or too much or whatever? Hopefully there's enough support for you in their, their desire for you to have a good experience being there, that's not a thing. But for me, I would say, if it's something that you can, kind of bring up in a one-on-one or some other normally scheduled meeting, then leave it for that. And if it's not, bring it up. It's not worth it for you to let things fester, because then a lot of other things start to happen, right? It really starts to affect your work, starts to affect your family, starts to affect your own well-being, those kinds of things. So I'm definitely a more is better type person, but it's important for you to ask your whoever you're working with what makes sense to them, and talk through that.
And if you're having to, like, if you feel like you're bringing the same thing up over and over again, that's a telling sign too, right? They should be addressing your concerns within, a timely manner, right? They're not going to be able to to answer everything right away, but allowing them time to like get you an answer or find a solution is important. So you shouldn't have
Absolutely.
to keep bringing up the same thing.
And and here again, I know this probably sounds easier said than done, but when you work remotely, it's equally your responsibility as it is your employer's responsibility to maintain the connection, right? So you have to be proactive. And like Kevin was just saying, if there's a thing that you're bringing up and you don't feel like it's being addressed, feel okay saying, hey, Jason, I keep bringing this thing to you and things keep not happening. Is it not important to you that this happens? Is it not important to you, or is it not part of the company's vision that this be a thing? Because that they may just be waiting for an opportunity to tell you, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not good with confrontation, but yeah, no, that's not ever going to happen. That might be a thing. At ZEAL, we've had that happen. We've had things where we sort of, we were hopeful and we had ideas and we were like, you know what, really, we gotta remove that from our mental space and be like, nope, that's not really a thing. We've talked about it enough and not done enough about it that we can be confident it's not a thing, and be okay asking that of your team.
Hey, Jason, I have a quick question actually for you and Kevin. Because of what's currently happening with everything, like the times and so many companies having to just adjust to remote work, do you have any recommendations for if anyone on the call or anyone listening is put into that position where the company doesn't have these set remote things in place yet? I from what I've heard from you guys, like leading by example is really important, but do you guys have any ideas on how an employee can share ideas that maybe like they can almost help come up with the solution, if that makes sense? But do you guys have any thoughts on like companies that are currently have to go to remote but maybe don't have all of this, like their framework set up? How can an employee be a really great remote team player and kind of help that? Is it lead by example only? What are some of your ideas?
I have a couple of thoughts on that. As I'm gonna call myself an employer, even though I'm more of a manager, but as an employer or a manager who is maybe who has been assigned the come up with how we do this remote work thing, I would always welcome input. I would always be willing to hear anyone's ideas, especially if they've already had an experience doing this kind of work or something like that. If for no other reason, then it means I get to work on it less, right? If you can save me time by bringing me a solution, I'm going to love that, right? Because I have a million other things already to do, right? So if you can bring me a solution, I'm always going to be very open to that. The other aspect of that, though, is that you may also have sort of co-team members who are not excited about working remote, right? So you may encounter some resistance if you're like the super gung-ho, I'm going to bring all my great ideas. Don't be surprised if you have some teammates who try to knock you down a little bit because they're like, just relax. We're going to be back in the office shortly. We don't need to do all your things, right? And so in that case, then it becomes more of a, okay, well, this is the pattern I'm going to adopt for myself. And if anybody else wants to do it, great. But, so I guess there's two parts to that. It's both. It's bring me your ideas, but also just do the thing that makes sense for you.
Awesome.
And I want to get to Rudolph's question too. Any recommendations on how to stay focused and avoid distractions while working from home? For me, the Pomodoro technique has worked well. Any other strategies you recommend? I think some of them are maybe a little bit obvious, but turning off certain notifications, closing certain applications, putting your phone in a different room, if you happen to, like many of us are sharing our space with our family because they can't go to work either, have a heart to heart with them and say, hey, I have to be able to have this time to focus. My work requires my attention. So what kind of agreement can we come to manage our space and keep that down? I mean, we have teammates who have pets walking in and out, kids walking in and out. The virtual backgrounds help a lot with that, but that only prevents me from knowing what's going on. You are still aware of it. And so it really helps if you can kind of create that little extra space. The Pomodoro technique is great. At ZEAL, like as Kevin mentioned, we do pair programming. And so in order to kind of keep that changed up, we do try to do a Pomodoro approach, whether it's 20 minutes or 30 or 40 or even an hour. We will switch up, we'll take breaks. I think the taking breaks is a big part of it. If you can go for 30 minutes and then take 5 off, maybe walk around the house, maybe take a look outside. I assume many of you are in San Diego, where outside is fantastic. So, do that, maybe, let that sun shine on your face for a few minutes and then get back into it. I think can help. It's going to be a different approach for everybody. Some people can sit down in that chair and just plow for 8 hours and not need a break. But if you do need a break, then you should take it. Chelsea, I love the idea of SUPs. Do you or anyone else have ideas on how to create that water cooler space, especially how to encourage your team to do it without management being around to facilitate? So there are some tools out there that you could pay for that sort of organize this SUP type of thing, where you basically put in all your teammates and then it assigns these, meetings for the team members to kind of do the thing. But we take a very simple approach. We just have a list of the teammates in an Excel spreadsheet, and we press the randomize column button, and it joins them up, and we send out an email. And I think in our Slack organization, we have a lot of channels for their various segments of off topic. So we have a channel for funny, so people are sharing funny things they find, and we have a channel we have a channel called Show Your Work. So if you are writing a blog post, or you've created a video, or planted a plant, or painted a painting, or any of those kinds of things, we have a place to share that stuff so that we can kind of all have that feeling like, oh, I kind of know what Sarah's doing. She just planted a garden this weekend, and so we kind of feel like we have that connection. So we have a few different places where we drop things like that. And we also, as Kevin mentioned, we have a daily stand-up, and during our stand-up we have a 5 or 10 minute section where we it's called interestings. And so those interestings can apply to work, can apply to tech, can apply to life, can apply to I just went snowmobiling, whatever it may be. So again, we try to inject our personal experiences into those different things so that hopefully we create that bond.
And I mean, so a lot of that's management focus. So personally, what I do, and this is because even if you weren't pairing, if you were just getting help, I focus on taking some time every day to chat with the people about non-work related things as I'm working with them. And I am very purposeful about that. I worked with a person who's no longer at ZEAL, but he was very, by the book, just, wanted to get work done, and that's cool. And that's how we started. And then I would just slowly interject a little thing here or there. And by the end of it, by the end of the time we were working together on that project, we would have pretty good conversations about our life and general things. So I purposefully do it because having, and we have the SUPs and I appreciate the SUPs, but I find it hard sometimes to okay, this week I have this person with this time and I got to go do that thing. And it feels very robotic to me at times. So I like much more natural conversation. So whoever I'm working with, whoever it may be, I purposely go out of my way and have more personal interactions with them. So that's me.
Yeah, and I think you know, you can use any sort of a technique or approach that you would use if you were trying to get to know anybody in life, right? Anytime you ask questions about people and what they're doing, it shows that you have an interest, and they start to open up. And so yeah, Kevin's really great at that. Unfortunately, Kevin and I are both really good at that, and we could probably talk all day and not get any work done, which is why we don't work together on the same things all the time. Any other questions?
We got time for one more question. I will ask one more question. My question is, I noticed that you guys have these like awesome, this is going to be so horrible of me, I'm going to call them like air traffic control headsets going right now, which is amazing. Do you guys have any recommendations for people who are getting into remote work of like what they should make sure, what is like the one essential thing that you would say, if you buy one thing for your workstation, it would be this? And I'll have both Jason and Kevin answer that question.
Assuming you have all the other things, you have a computer, you have a desk, you have a chair, those kinds of things. I do think that the headset is important. Lately, we have people who are using AirPods, and those are pretty good. But what happens is the batteries die, and then you gotta like scramble, and oh, I gotta reconnect in a second because I gotta change headphones or whatever. So it can be a little distracting, especially if you're in any sort of flow, right? So I really like wired headsets personally, and these are HyperX 2, and the cord is really long, so you have plenty of mobility. The audio, I think, probably sounds pretty good. They are also noise canceling, so even if you had other stuff going on around, the person you're talking to wouldn't hear that. Whereas a lot of, if you use your built-in mic on your computer, you wouldn't necessarily have that. So I really do think this is a great piece of kit. But yeah, other than your standard computer components, mouse, keyboard. A monitor, I think, is also very helpful, even if you have a laptop with a monitor built in. If you are pairing with someone who is using a monitor, you will have a challenging experience with font sizes and things like that. So having an external monitor is also super helpful.
I will add, as you know, I like to move around. I'm moving around constantly. So like this and I wasn't always like this. Like I used to have really bad back issues and I couldn't sleep and all that kind of stuff. So the investment of a sit-down, stand-up automated desk is a huge win. And then on top of that, the yoga ball. Those two things were the biggest two things. And the yoga ball is like $10. So it's really an easy thing to try to see if it's your kind of thing. The reason a sit-down stand-up desk is important is because when you first start using a yoga ball, you'll find that your core is extremely weak. And you can only sit down for a small amount of time on it until you start to get achy. So then you stand up and then you work. So those are my tips, since then I move around. So I can actually, if I wanted to, I can sit Indian style on my ball now, and I have very good posture because of it, and just balance on it. So yeah, those two things.
Kevin, I'm 100% just like you. I need to be moving, especially when I'm talking. Otherwise, I like take tons of notes too, because I'm such a kinesthetic person that I just need to be moving, up and moving. So I totally agree. Well, Kevin, Jason, thank you guys both so much for this awesome information today. For those who are on the call or those listening in, please make sure to check out ZEAL at codingzeal.com. They also do a tremendous podcast, which I recommend that anyone who is a developer or just interested in the tech industry in general to check out ZEAL's podcast, because it's a really, really amazing one. And then feel free, for more information, you can always check out Learn Academy at learnacademy.org. And we also have a podcast that you guys can check out. It's really great. And the recording of this will be located on our YouTube channel. So thank you again to Kevin and Jason for everything today. And for those who are on the call, have a wonderful rest of your day, a great weekend, and we will see you at the next Connected Sessions.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.